listening to Give Yourself Some Leeway. With me, your host, Eugene Lee. Today, I am joined by Dr. Terry Zachary, a former professional golfer and sports chiropractor who broke the code on hand exercises and grip strength training. Now, you're probably wondering, what does grip strength training and carpal tunnel and tennis elbow have to do with burnout recovery? Well, just like tennis elbow and carpal tunnel and all of these debilitating wrist injuries come from an imbalance in your grip, so too does an imbalance in one's lifestyle result in chronic stress, overwhelm, and burnout. Sometimes we often focus too much on one element of our busy lives at the expense of our fun, our connection with others, or our fulfillment. So if you're listening to the audio version of this episode, I highly recommend that you check out the video. I'll leave the YouTube link below because Dr. Terry and I go through some of the daily exercises you can do to improve your grip strength. So for the full benefit of this episode, I highly recommend you check out the video version of this episode. So without further ado, I really hope you enjoy today's episode with Dr. Terry Zachary. So, Terry, welcome to Give Yourself Some Leeway. And I know this conversation has been a long time coming.
Eugene, it has been. Thanks for having me. I'm completely looking forward to talking to you. And as we both know, business, it's a big world out there, a lot of hands out there, and just life. Do a lot of coaching, still involved with sports, and have a couple of kids in hockey. And next thing you know, months pass, but I'm glad we're finally doing it. I'm looking forward to it.
Awesome. And I suppose just to give people a bit of your background from sports chiropractor to pro golfer and now the Handmaster Plus.
Yeah, that's about the way it progressed, Eugene. You know, kind of the last thing I thought, maybe not the last thing I thought I'd ever be involved with, but I studied because of golf. I think golf, it takes such detailing to advance at golf, especially at the higher levels. You have to be really acute to the detailing of the golf swing and of what positions your body's in. And I think that led me to be interested in studying the body and in chiropractic, and especially sports chiropractic, how it moved. But I never got the love of chasing that dream to play on the PGA Tour really out of my system. Took some time off. And by that time, I had studied repetitive grip injuries quite a bit because I had been in practice for several years before. I took the little hiatus, and once I got back on tour, it was mini tours. I was playing a lot of mini tours, but the amount of repetitive grip injuries, and that's finger and thumb and, hand, wrist, carpal tunnel, elbow, those are all repetitive grip injuries. And I saw them rampant on tour, and it really did wake me up to, wow, these advanced stage golfers really don't know anything very much about grip. And in fact, I would almost say they didn't know anything about grip, because what they did know was faulty. It was repetitive grip training. And it led me to 3 a.m. having a bit of an aha moment about a way to solve it instead of, multiple exercises, which is what I did in practice, 4 or 5 exercises. And a lot of people won't do those. And I understand that because there's other parts of the body to train and life gets busy, as you and I both know. So when we developed Handmaster Plus, it was like, man, I think this could really work and save me time on explaining, but save the user on training grip actually properly and, still through 3 dimensions, but we can talk about that. But it all led to, really delving into grip.
Yeah, because whenever I hear someone talk about grip strength and grip training, all I imagined it was like a thing on a spring with 2 handles, and you could like twist it to give yourself a bit more resistance. And it was like, 5, 10, or 20 kg of resistance. And I was like, okay, you might do three sets of 5 reps or something. And next thing you're like, okay, my hand's a bit sore. But trying to be consistent with that, it was kind of, let's say, a boring one. But when you were explaining the Handmaster Plus, it sounded like there was a lot more going on rather than just gripping a handle and seeing, let's say, gripping that handle with the wire, the spring thing on it. It didn't seem so much like you were exercising or going through the motions of your grip. It was just more a test of strength, a test of your grip strength rather than actually training it.
Yeah, I think, it's a pretty good, it's a pretty good explanation. And I think what I've seen, because again, I grew up, I'm Canadian, so I was a hockey player first. And, they wanted us to train grip, and it was the coiled gripper that you talk about. That was the kind of the archaic old thing, still around today, by the way, Eugene. And I hope I'll talk your users out of that for many reasons, but it was the best they had at the time. And we see a lot of spring-loaded grippers and like rings and stuff like that. And the problem is that as that developed, there was really nobody really followed through with seeing, hey, does that work? Is that complete? There's never any testing. And by the time I got into it, there's really nothing to find on it. But I knew the anatomy inside and out, and I knew the injuries that were happening in these grip sports. And there's so much to do with the stabilizing muscles of grip. And grip isn't just the muscles that close. Those are the hand closing muscles, yes. But let's remember that anytime we have like a coiled unit, your hand doesn't move in one plane, like in 2 dimensions, like that coiled unit is designed in. Same with the spring loading unit. Your hand doesn't move within, the resistance can't be in just in one plane, like in 2 dimensions. And that's what it's asking you to do, a really unnatural motion. That's the first thing. But it's really only resisting 9 of the muscles at most, and not even a full natural range of motion. So I was really critical. That's what I did all the time growing up, playing hockey, playing basketball, and then eventually playing golf. But when you went to school, and now we're learning anatomy and physiology, and you go into dissection, and you're really looking at these muscles intricately. And if you're really wowed by the body like I am, you're looking at it and saying, well, what are these muscles back here for? Like, you have 9 muscles in the back of your fingers and thumb and hand, wrist, and all the way to your elbow that affect all of those joints, including the carpal tunnel. And I said, well, are those things put there by mistake? Are they useless? And I started questioning that. And I also, in grip sports, I saw a lot of elbow injuries and repetitive gripping. In sports and music were kind of my specialties. And then I said, this is crazy. We don't understand how to train the elbow properly. And so, getting back to your question, yeah, when I saw people just taking some type of a spring-loaded or coiled gripper and doing that, which is how I started before I studied this and got interested. But then when you go on the end of that and you interview enough patients, and I say, well, what do you do for your grip? Just taking, what's your history? And they will say, well, I either do nothing, which just means like, if I'm a hockey player or a golfer or guitar player, I'm just gripping. Or they would be using like a squeeze only item, like what you and I are talking about. And I could see, okay, they're not doing anything to strengthen the muscles that open and spread the hand. And what we're basically getting is a shortening of the hand closing muscles, which attach all the way finger, thumb, hand, wrist, carpal tunnel, forearm, and elbow. So that whole mechanical chain is getting collapsed. That's what I saw in practice. And, that's clear to you because you're an expert in that, but it's unique to the patients. But when I got out onto the golf tours and saw all these mini tours, players with really debilitating injuries, especially carpal tunnel and elbow problems, then I realized, okay, this is really got to be, these people have to be re-educated, and we've kind of got to break open the code of grip training, because it's not right.
Yeah, I think that even beyond, let's say, when it comes to training, as we said with the coil one, you're always gripping in like that. But let's say even when you're playing piano or even gaming or playing guitar or anything, when you feel the strain, the first thing you do, you kind of go like that to relax yourself. And there again, straight up, they're the muscles that you don't train with that coil grip. It's like, and so if you're doing that for relief, you're like, okay, then there's obviously a weakness in these muscles here.
Yeah, that's exactly the case. And we talk about that a lot, is that your body is very intuitive. Your body's very intuitive. And And as you make that comment, Eugene, what I compare it to a lot, because the mechanics are starkly similar, is to what your posture is. So if somebody said that the thing is, posture is a little more obvious and known to us. So if you saw one of your buddies walking around and he was really had really poor posture, the last thing you would tell him to do is hunch more. Okay, Bill, Debbie, whatever, you've got really bad posture. I want you to slouch more. Well, that would be crazy. Nobody would ever give anybody that type of advice. But yet, we're always doing things where we're gripping our coffee cup, our pen. We're, like you say, we're flexing in everything. And yet we're taking something and squeezing more. It just comes from a lack of understanding of how grip works, because the muscles that you're talking about, that when I'm gripping all the time, or say, like, if you're taking a long drive and you're on your steering wheel for a while, you're usually going to stretch your hands out. So inherently that there's an imbalance. But those muscles that are on the back of your fingers and thumb and hand, wrist, forearm, there's 9 of those muscles, just like there's 9 of these muscles in the front. The body's set up pretty simply. It's just that they're complicated muscles, but the layout is pretty simple. And these muscles, every time I contract to grab something, these muscles are working just as hard in support of the grip. So it's actually a co-contraction between those 18 muscles. So the idea that we're taking something and squeezing it and just paying attention to this, it's like when you're the young men, when they're training biceps, they maybe, the chest and the biceps to impress the girls. Well, everything's there, but pretty soon they end up hunched forward, and they know they need to train the upper back muscles and the triceps to keep that body in balance. And that's a similar thing with the hands. It just, for whatever reason, and Eugene, if you ask me why this started, I have no answer for you. But for whatever reason, the hands have been left to pasture, and nobody pays attention to the real obvious anatomical layout of the hands and how they work. And I kind of stumbled on it because I had expertise in the grip and the application by athletes, and therefore could put 2 and 2 together, where maybe my passions led me to this, where somebody else might not have had both passions together.
Yeah, I suppose that's where the sports chiropractor and the again being professional golfer just came hand in hand. And I think it's when our life experiences, we kind of have that extra awareness as well, when you're seeing it from a perspective as both in chiropractic and as a golfer, and even in hockey as well. And I suppose that gives you an advantage in one way, that you have that extra awareness, and you're like, okay, this is why we're seeing repetitive injuries or extra strain, or maybe someone could improve their swing if they focused on these muscles. I think, was it it was Tiger Woods, he changed his golf swing, and it was it before he got really big. He was a great golfer. He was always like a prodigy, but didn't he change his golf swing, and everyone thought that he was going to basically lose all of these tournaments now that he was changing things up? But he just started from scratch. Do you think, was that something similar, that he was improving the swing, was in terms of accuracy, or was that because of strains or something holding him back?
Yeah, it's always hard. Many people have speculated on Tiger, and it's always hard to know exactly why he did what he did. I mean, I have what I think are some observations about it. He's pretty tight-lipped, especially back in those days, about why he was doing what. But as he started to get stronger and stronger, and I think he always wanted to improve. He was always looking to get better, and making sure he didn't run into any ceiling. Obviously, I think the best pure player of golf ever. So people might say, well, what about why a ceiling? But the other thing to remember is he changed teachers as well. So you change teachers, and there's a little bit of a perspective change there too. I know Tiger was also, real physical fitness buffed. We actually tried to make efforts at contacting Tiger just to make sure that he's not running into these repetitive grip problems, because we work with a lot of professional golfers. It's pretty difficult to get a hold of Tiger Woods, let me tell you that. But at the same time, he was really into physical fitness, and with that type of speed coming through your body on a golf's not a supernatural, it's certainly not a balanced motion. And you're building up, you're building up and you're coiling a lot of energy, and then you've got to release a lot through your body, and there's got to be a resistance because as you hit a golf ball, there's some resistance in your body to let centrifugal force do its thing and throw the golf club to the target through your body. So Tiger had a lot of knee problems, which is well documented and stuff like that. So I don't know all the reasons why he did it, but I assume that he was probably worried about some limitations in what he could do. But I think also just on staying healthy, you'll often have to change your swing. He was a loose, skinny, really long arc, amazing golf swing and he was dominating. And then as you get bigger and older, that changes. But again, I think having a new, changing teachers lends to that. But it's a pretty tough to get a read on it for sure. Tiger was pretty, his camp was pretty tight back then.
I think the reason I touched on that was because, as you said, as people get stronger and more used to a certain routine or activity, they tend to get complacent. They're like, oh, this is the way I've always done this. This is how it's always been. So why would I change anything? And with that, that's where we get our repetitive injuries or all these strains. For me, it was like I had a repetitive strain on my ankle. I ended up spraining my ankle as a result of, again, bad posture, not taking care of my ankle over time. And it wasn't until that imbalance just snapped one day, and I was like, okay, and it was just the pain, the swelling, everything, and having to rehabilitate it over time. But it isn't until all that wear and tear over time, until it becomes unbearable, you're like, okay, now I'm going to change something, rather than making the preventive change ahead of time. And it's also on the other end of it is when people don't see all that repetitive strain over time either from the outside, until something bad happens where you can no longer use it, or until it's a long road to recovery.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a really good point. We'll skip from the Tiger just to the regular human being, because I think that's a good comparison. Like, you go to Tiger, and I think one of the reasons he certainly was making changes is he's trying to get better and he's trying to keep his body healthy. So whatever they were doing in there, I think it's a combination of that. The regular, I'll say regular human being, but the way we do things in general is often that we don't really make the changes until we see a big problem, until they're unbearable, and now it becomes a nuisance in our life, or we're in pain, or we're going through something like that. That's something I think a lot of people in the healthcare and the fitness professions are trying to change. We're one of them. And I think that's why we do podcasts like these as well, Eugene. We want to talk to your audience and say, this is how this area works. And if you're repetitive gripping in your job or in your hobby or in your sport or music or whatever, you're a gamer, these mechanics are not going to, somehow go by you. You're going to run into repetitive grip problems if you repetitively grip. What we talk a lot about is we want our athletes or our workers, or whoever's gripping, we want them to excel and we want them to thrive. And that's what we talk about. Here's your mechanics. In order to get to be the best you can be at what you're doing, let's get let's get your entire body. Like, that's your main instrument, your body. It's not a golf club. Your golf club is no good if your body's not. That's your main equipment. So we're trying to get people into that, and we're saying, if you're strong and balanced with good blood flow, that's where you're going to perform at the most. And then getting injured is almost, the chance of being injured is slim to none. But the mentality, that's one of the things we bring in grip. We talk to a lot of people about having these joints thrive so that you perform well, and not waiting till you have there's a carpal tunnel problem or a tennis elbow problem. Like, I saw one of the guys that I traveled with was one of the ones that really pushed the urgency for me to create a solution. And he had a tennis elbow so bad, He was debilitating. He couldn't pick up a cup of coffee. And we don't want that to happen. The golfers we talk to, or any of the athletes, whatever grip, we work with a lot of hockey players. We just worked with a hockey player this morning, literally, about it, and talking where we're starting to feel some wrist pain. And we talked to him about, okay, don't let that get out of hand. Let's understand this area. We'll lead you to that. Like, you got to have expertise. That's the other thing. Going back to Tiger has a lot of experts that he can work with. And that's just, at that level of being an advanced athlete, and technically, with the revenue Tiger has, he can say, I'm going to have this type of coach, that type of coach, this type of consultant. And that's what we're trying to be to people, is you can say, we can take this grip area that's been really ignored through all of health and fitness, and we can make it easy for you to become your own expert and start training. But we want it to be preventive, like you're talking about. We want people to maximize their performance, not wait till a problem starts.
Yeah, because I think people always see let's say the sizzle of the steak and all the flashy stuff on social media. They'll see the bigger muscles getting shredded. They see all the health benefits that they're looking for, the beach body and the likes, and the perfect tan. But they don't see, okay, maybe I need to improve my circulation, take better care of my gastrointestinal health, take better care of the joints that hold all of these things together, so that I can live without pain and actually have a higher quality of life. These are the less sexy things that actually promote longevity. And especially when it comes to hand exercises, people are going to be like, oh, my hands are fine. I've never trained hands in my life, and it's been 30 or 40 years. So why start now?
It's what we see all the time. And I think that's why this area has been ignored for a long time. And we forget, though, like, I'm really close to the tree on this one, because I'll look at people and say, well, we deal with golfers, and they might not have a hand exercise routine or grip strength training routine. And we're going like, but you grip a golf club. Like, how do you miss that? Or we deal with a lot of bodybuilders, weight trainers, heavy lifters, and a lot of them have elbow problems, and they don't say anything until we come to them. Then the one way that I will kind of let people off their complacency about grip is that nobody's ever been really a grip expert, where they say, if you don't take care of this grip, so your grip joints, people would think, well, what are your grip joints? Well, maybe my fingers and my thumb and my hand. No, it's also your wrist, your forearm, your elbow. Those are all grip joints. Everything you do with those joints is to grip something. The carpal tunnel is a grip structure. The radial tunnel is a grip structure. So there's all these structures that are not really thought of, and we're not really related to grip. And as we're educating more people, we'll say, like, we mean my elbow has something to do with grip, my carpal tunnel has something to do with grip. Yet they are strictly grip structures. That's why they're there. And that's why we train. So, we train 27 muscles in grip, not just the little 9, maybe. We train all the muscles of grip, so that the fingers and the thumb and the hand and the wrist and the carpal tunnel and the, forearm and elbow are all balanced and all thriving. But people are complacent about it because it's not sexy. But it's your connection to everything you do. And once it goes, it becomes a concern to people. It goes from not sexy to a big concern, real fast.
And one thing I do love about it is just how simple it is, because that's everything that I've been doing in terms of helping people to overcome burnout and overwhelm and stress. What is the simplest way that you can start to improve yourself today? And that's one thing I love about this exercise, even without the Handmaster Plus, just the motion of the exercise. Definitely going to have to put this out as a video episode on Spotify and YouTube, because that's the best way to demonstrate this. So if you don't mind running through just the motion of...
Not at all.
Yeah,
not at all. Eugene, it's one thing that too, when we get a chance to speak to audiences, they don't have one of our products right in front of them. I can show it with the product, but as you say, you can start without the product, and just to educate. And even hearing what you and I have talked about already, Eugene, and there's 9 muscles that close the hand, and there's 9 muscles that open the hand. they're not going to exercise the hands wrong again. So we're off to the races. But I'll show you the complete kind of mechanical chain of grip. So I'll try to show this as best I can. If I look in the front of my fingers, thumb, hand, wrist, carpal tunnel, forearm, and elbow, I've got 9 muscles that are basically in the front. Okay. And I won't go into them because it does get a little bit tricky and boring to a lot of people. So they attach all the way down to those areas, all the way down to the medial elbow. When I turn the hand around, same thing, about 9 muscles that attach and affect all of those joints and structures again. Okay. All the way down to the outside of the elbow now. But so that's just, if I keep my hand in one position, those are the 18 grip muscles. Whenever I grip this, these muscles are contracting. So I want to keep them all trained through their full natural range of motion. I want strong, long muscles that are in balance. So far that makes sense. So what you can just have people do just to train those muscles is they just can close their hand against nothing and open and spread against nothing. Now, most of the viewers, we always grip. So when I close and I open and spread, they're not going to find much in the closing muscles, but even just opening and spreading without any resistance, you're going to feel that because most people haven't used those 9 muscles that open and spread. So that's what we taught a lot of people, like say just a pianist that keeps their wrist pretty straight, or somebody on computer, would just be that exercise. When it comes to anybody that's actively in grip, we've got the golfers, the hockey players, but you name it, cricket, baseball, you name it. We want to teach them the entire grip mechanics. So now the same mechanics. So now I'm going to add to that, Eugene. I don't want to complicate things. You think of 9 muscles closed, 9 muscles open, but then in the forearm, you've got 9 muscles that position your wrist for whatever you do. If I'm a hockey player, I've got my wrist a certain way, tennis player a certain way, guitar player a certain way, dental hygienist a certain way, factory worker a certain way, et cetera, et cetera. So now what we want to do is at the end of the day, they'll be doing that day in, day out. We want to offset what they do and train all 27 muscles. So what I'd have your viewers do is they close against the hand, open and spread, just like we did before. And now with the hand open and spread, they would just make a figure 8 as wide as they can at the wrist. So I'd close, open and spread, figure 8 at the wrist. Okay. Close, open and spread, figure 8 at the wrist. Just by doing that, and again, I can show you our product really quickly as well with that, but just by doing that, we take all 27 muscles of grip through their full natural range of motion, and we're not going to allow those muscles to shorten into, I grab bricks every day. Okay. But if I grab bricks every day, I'm going to shorten into that imbalance. When we offset it, we have at the end of the day, they stay balanced, healthy with good blood flow.
And if someone did want to start that today, let's say they might be feeling a bit of wrist problems, or maybe they're not, and they just want to prevent feeling wrist problems in the future. Is there a certain amount of reps that they should work up to? Should they do it more than once a day? Should it be, let's say, a 3 times a day thing that they work up to? Or what's the optimal, just to help, let's say, get the motion into the joints?
Yeah, you really, these joints and tissues. Now, again, if they do have any problem in any of these joints, they should be seeing, a healthcare professional that works with the upper extremity. That's the first thing I would always say, is you don't take it on yourself, because sometimes there could be some advanced adhesions and some adaptations that they really should have a professional to help with. But when it comes to restoring the muscle function of grip, they can do that exercise that I'm talking about. You really can't overdo it too much. I mean, you'll see when you're tired, it shouldn't take you any more than a couple of minutes without resistance. This is, if you put, so this is a light product, and it's a simple looking product. Like, it's nothing. It looks like a little toy, and that's probably what keeps people away from it. When you add resistance, so I slip it on the thumb, I slip it on the finger like that. Now, when I add resistance, okay, so I'm just going to do that same thing. I close, I open. If I'm just strengthening the carpal tunnel in the hands. But if I'm doing the other one, I close, I open, and I do a figure 8. Okay, so now I've got some resistance there. And now, once there's resistance, it won't take long for people to really feel that. And you'll feel all the 27 muscles that would generally take between, a minute or so. But we always tell people to do that exercise until they feel comfortable fatigue. And then we have them do it 1 to 3 times a day. They're not muscles that you can really overwhelm. You'll feel a fatigue before you're going to have any problems.
Because it's similar to, let's say, again, my experience with my ankle, and it was the imbalance was that I was taking the pressure off one leg and putting more pressure on another, having that imbalance there. So yeah. I sprained one ankle, and next thing, while I was getting that, when I was recovering from that ankle, they said that the next risk was that my second ankle would go, because the imbalance was that I was putting all the support on the other side now, but also that it affected other areas. That they said, oh, the reason you have the pain in your ankle is because you have the stiffness as far as your glutes, your lower back, as far as my shoulders. So is it the same with the hands? I suppose it's different maybe with the legs, because again, it's supporting you from the ground up. But do imbalances in your hands, wrists, forearms affect any other part of the body?
Yeah, it's a really good question. And actually it's a question just for listeners. Now I would, because I've seen ankle injuries forever. I dealt with basketball players, volleyball players. So I've seen, tons of ankle problems, had them myself. I was a, wannabe basketball player. So again, we're all getting back. I'm glad you brought it back to the concept of imbalance, because basically, our bodies are amazing, but we have to keep them in balance, right? So weight bearing is a little bit different than what we're talking to here. But remember, you're talking to a chiropractor. So I'm a really big fan of the spine, about making sure, like, through my ears, I'm going to make sure my shoulders are balanced, my pelvis is balanced. And I go get checked usually 2 or 3 months, just to make sure that stays in balance. I stretch every day. I stretch in a balanced way. And again, I don't want to sound silly, but on doczac.com, which will tell you where to get information. And we actually do a 3-minute stretching program. Well, that's a program I've given to athletes and that I've done for over 10 years. So when you're talking about the spine, so I'm getting to your ankle thing here, Eugene, because I've got a lot of experience with ankles. As your body develops a pattern, okay, so professional golfers, I can tell you, if it's a right-handed golfer, now I don't know how our screen's showing here, but if it's a right-handed golfer, they'll be practicing like this, for their career. You'll generally be able to tell, is it a right? You can look at the professional golfers on TV and you'll see shoulders this way and a head tilt that way. Okay, so now there's a certain thing that doesn't just stay at their head and shoulders, that goes down to the pelvis. The body moves as one based on its center of gravity. So going back to this, to the reason I am so adamant with myself and my patients about keeping that body on its vertical center, is that once the body comes off its vertical center, once the spine is off its vertical center, you can pick a joint and they're all working on imbalance. Okay, gravity is straight down. Once I'm off my vertical center, the shoulder, the elbow, everything is working off balance, but especially the weight bearing areas, the low back, the hip, the knee, the ankle. So you'll see with basketball players, they'll usually sprain the same ankle over and over. And you rarely actually see it cross to the other side, because the pattern of their body is going to lean more weight, and it's going to bring one ankle closer to where their vertical center is. Okay. And that's why you want to keep the body balanced so much. I know it's a long explanation, but I also now want to go back to what you said about the hands. It's different because the weight bearing of the body and the balance of the entire body is going to have a lot to do with what happens on your weight bearing joints. And that's why it's a real good idea to keep your spine on its vertical center. The spine also protects the nervous system, which is all your internal signaling in your body. So it's a good idea. Balanced spine is good for everything. When it comes to the hand, they're a little bit more unique because it's not weight bearing, but it's repetitive grip. It reacts to what you do with your grip. Okay. But I'll go back to that. Now that we've established, I think your audience understand there's 9 muscles that close the hand that are in the front, 9 muscles that open the hand on the back. When those muscles become imbalanced, it brings everything into a flexion imbalance, meaning the fingers shorten, the thumbs shorten. So you could have a finger thumb problem. The carpal tunnel right here shuts down. That's why you see so much carpal tunnel problems. if you train somebody like this, if somebody's got a repetitive grip job that is red flagged for carpal tunnel, get one of these balls. It costs you, I don't know how much, but it's less than, it's $20, $30, whatever. And just train the muscles that open and spread. Once these muscles are strong, that carpal tunnel stays thriving. Okay, so it's an easy exercise. If you can't remember to close and open, that's a problem. But whenever those muscles get shortened, which most people have it, fingers shut down, thumbs shut down, carpal tunnel, forearm shortens, and the elbow gets all imbalanced. Okay, so when I'm trying to do something in the elbow and I've got these shortened muscles, we're going to have a problem. If I am grabbing something all the time, but these extensor muscles contract statically, they become a problem over time, and you see a lot of tennis elbow in grip athletes. I'll make one comment about that, is that pickleball, I don't know how it is in Europe, but pickleball over here, it used to be an old person sport. It's become hugely popular. You wouldn't believe how many people we see that are having tennis elbow problems because they've been gripping all their life, and now they're doing these pickleballs, a lot of wrist action, a lot of little touch shots. But it's an example for all sports. As people get older, they haven't taken care of this. It doesn't get them yet, but over time it will. And that's why we're showing people how to easily train this grip so that all of those structures stay in balance. So with grip, Eugene, repetitive grip causes problems at all those structures: fingers, thumbs, hand, wrist, carpal tunnel, forearm, and elbow. So there's a cubital tunnel that also is a problem, and a radial tunnel that's a problem, but they're all related to grip imbalance.
Yeah, because when it came to the weight bearing there, I think that's where people see the most prominent issues. I mean, for me, it was, I grew up a farming background. You're always carrying a bag over the shoulder to go feed the cows or something. It was always weight bearing, and you'd always have your most dominant shoulder, and you'd straight off see the misalignment. And it's like, okay, I go into a chiropractor and they say they can see it straight away. When it comes to the hand imbalance, this is something that I saw a lot. I worked in a microbiology lab for almost 10 years. And especially when it comes to pipette guns and test tubes and spreading on plates. And it's a lot of technical skill. And people are like, oh, but you're not, let's say, lifting heavy weights, or you're not carrying bags over your, well, we actually work it, but that's a story for another day. But the technical skill was that there was like, oh, it's technical skill, you're not lifting heavy weights, so it's going to be affecting your shoulders or your spine as much. But because it's a lot of hand technique, and it's a lot of, let's say, elbows on the table, and that's your support, and you're doing a lot of hand technique. Same when it comes to music, when it comes to piano or working at a keyboard. And then you're going to have, as you said, the finger flexion and the carpal tunnel and the likes. And that's where you run into the issues. It's not until people have carpal tunnel, or they're feeling wrist pains, or they can't hold that position for too long. And especially if it's technical, if it's surgical or something, you're like, I need to grip this, but I can't do it for a sustained period of time because it causes pain or causes pins and needles.
Yeah. So now you're getting into, it's an area, it's such a good question. I can't even tell you how good of a question it is, because that's what people think is, it's not much weight, right? But we don't understand what it takes to imbalance areas. So you talked about a pipette. This is classic. So we talk about, we see people in labs a lot, which are the ones that develop carpal tunnel syndrome. And you go, well, they're not even doing any work. Okay, so let's look at this. If I was to grab something like there's a softball in America anyways. There's like a softball and a smaller baseball. Well, the softball's a little bigger. It fits almost the size of your hand in general. Okay, so there's not a lot of stress. Now, basketball puts a lot of stress when you're trying to grip a basketball, because now these muscles are having to work like crazy. As you get into something that's a little bit more of a handful size, I use this like a softball in underhand pitch softball, that fits almost right into the hand. It's actually not that much of a stress. Still, if you're gripping it 1,000 times, that adds up. But now you get into a pipette or an artist's brush, or, which we see a lot, one of the toughest ergonomic problems is dental hygienists. They're doing these things. Now, so watch what happens if I'm going to pretend to grab a pipette and I'm going to look at the carpal tunnel and I'm going to look at the thumb. These are the main intrinsic thumb muscles are here. Main intrinsic small finger muscles are here. Watch them contract and watch what happens to this. Watch what happens to that nice wide carpal tunnel. It just shuts down. Okay, so now if I've got that thing shut down, and remember, I've got 9 tendons going through that, 9 tendons going through that little area that when it's neutral, it's about the size of your thumb. So I've got 9 tendons as well as a median nerve trying to come through this miraculous grip structure. It's amazing grip structure when you study it. Okay, but we don't, well, who cares about the carpal tunnel unless I need to cut it up is basically the way we look at it. But when I'm doing this on a regular basis, I would say to you right away, I'd say, Eugene, if you're doing pipettes every day, you better darn well get your employer to get a whack of these things for your lab, or they're going to have problems. Because once I do that, I shut down that carpal tunnel over and over. And if that's what I'm doing, I can expect to have carpal tunnel problems like crazy. Okay. As well as thumb problems, as well as finger problems. The other thing is you're usually palm down when you're dealing with a pipette. So gravity's going this way, right? So if I've got a pipette that's that way over time all day, I can tell you that actually does get heavy. And it's also difficult on your extensor muscles because not only are they contracting to help these flexor muscles hold the pipette, but they're also contracting to hold your finger against gravity. Okay, so there's a lot going on in situations where you're grabbing a small tool. An artist is the same, except they're not palm down. Okay, but a pipette, you're often palm down, and those small muscles are contracting. They're tiny muscles. If they don't get opposed, there's going to be problems. Now, I'll also go into the other thing about a pipette. And if you want to talk about this more, people can extrapolate about this. But look at the range of motion my hand's going through if I've got a pipette or a paintbrush. These fingers aren't going through much of a range of motion. And the one thing that I've learned that I didn't know about through studying grip this intensely is that if you don't put, just like any joint, if I put my shoulder and I don't put it through a full range of motion over time, my body's going to say, oh, Eugene's not using his shoulder very much. I don't need to innately open up blood flow and lymph drainage. I don't have to be very efficient with that joint. So your internal, homeostasis just says, oh, Eugene's just holding a pipette all the time, contracting there. If he was doing this all day, then I would stimulate blood flow and lymph drainage, and we become very efficient. That's how your body reacts to your environment. But if I'm doing this all day statically, your body's going like, okay, first of all, there's a lot of problems there. I better thicken these joints and make it strong in that position. And then look out, the carpal tunnel really shuts down. The thumb and the finger really shuts down. So I would lend to the conversation that pipetting is a very difficult job. Maybe it's not like as obvious as the sack of hay or supplies or whatever you're talking about, but I can tell you that's a very difficult job. And it doesn't get the attention because when you do finally have problems, they're not going to tell you to offset it. They're going to usually, do cortisol, like a cortisone shot, or they're going to do a carpal tunnel surgery. And we're here to say, pay attention to the way the beautiful body is designed. And if either quit the pipette job or do something to offset it so that you keep healthy and just got to understand your body.
Yeah, because I know people who've been doing it for the past 10, 15, 20 years, and they're like, oh, I do it every day. Hasn't been causing me issues until the day that it does. And you're like, okay, well, it's very hard to tell someone, okay, this one part of your job that you're doing 12 hours a day could cause issues. You either have the option to stop doing it before it stops you from doing anything else, or offset it. Again, is it the antagonistic motion of, again, going the opposite direction?
Hey, also, just so I get my language right, and I don't want to, I would say even prepare your body for what you do. That might be a better way but offsetting it is a good way to say it. But I would also say, like, if you like, I think one of the things we talk about a lot, and burnout you talk about, right? And I love the subject because you can run into burnout unless if you want to make, if we're talking about pipettes for longer than I thought we would, but that's okay because it's a good example. But if I want to be the best I can be at a lab, right, at doing this pipette, the other thing about training your body fully, right, is you're going to be really good at pipetting. Like you'll be a lot cleaner at your control. But once the whole grip mechanics of grip start to break down, because they will, then you've got a problem with how accurate are you going to be, like how quick are you going to be, all those things. So we talk about preparing your body to thrive for what we do, or for what you do. And if I'm going to be like a golfer, you talk about Tiger Woods. We talked earlier about Tiger Woods. Tiger Woods wanted to do every single thing he could with golf at the highest level. Okay, we don't know if he did anything with grip with our stuff, but that's the highest level you'll do grip, is by training all the muscles. And that's I believe we burn out when we approach things with a kind of I won't say minimalistic, but real average approach to what we do. I'm going to be a darn good lab technician. Well, why don't you strive to learn everything about being a lab technician, including how to best prepare your body for working a pipette? I do believe that, brings a sense of accomplishment, a lot of confidence, and a knowledge about the experience of what they're doing. I think service is a big deal. And if you're serving your job well, that comes with knowing how to prepare your main equipment, which is you.
Yeah, I think that's kind of touching on, again, priming yourself,
Yeah.
as a good way of putting it, and it kind of falls under self-care, because I think a lot of the time people aren't aware of themselves, that why is it that I'm working so hard and striving so hard to achieve this, and
Yeah.
especially when they feel that it's beyond their control, or again maybe they're already feeling the pain of a carpal tunnel, but they don't want it affecting their work, so they're just going to work through the pain, or I don't want to think about surgery right now, so I'm just going to try and work through it and not process those emotions, not process those thoughts, and keep on going, basically keep on going until I can't go anymore. And I think it all comes back to what I found recently, people always pushing to achieve more without realizing why they're doing it. And I've come across the concept of ikigai, which is about living your life's purpose. And I think, and that comes back to awareness. Once you're aware of what your life's purpose is, you're going to, if your life's purpose is to work with pets in the lab, then you're going to be like, okay, I want to prime my life so that it doesn't affect my ability to do that technique, that I can work to my best, that I don't compromise on my technique as a result of overuse, wear and tear over time. That I want to, again, prime the joints, keep that circulation, keep everything loose and free from injury, so that it doesn't affect my work.
I mean, I love what you say there, because, well, I also think that's, our purpose in our life is a really important thing. Like, we're all going to basically find I shouldn't say we're all, but in general, we want to find something that we enjoy doing. I love studying the body. I love studying how the body moves. I'm still trying to figure out golf. I mean, as much as I can, but that outlet is something that I've never been bored in my life, because I'm always looking at that. And the rabbit hole goes deep. And I think like you're talking about, if you are aware that, if you're aware of what your purpose and what you're, for lack of a better word, put here to do, like the things you're put here to do it well. And, learning about what it takes to do anything well and to be of good service I think is one of the things that brings happiness, and also, brings success as well. If you're just thinking about, well, I want to make so much money, and I want to have this car, and I want to have that. To me is a recipe for disaster, because you're not outside yourself. You're not thinking about your service to others. And once you think about, I want to be the best service to others that I can be, even in my situation, I'm always looking how to make, for the longest time, we're looking how to make these exercises better and better, and how to communicate it better. And if you're doing that and you're trying to serve others, it's very difficult to get bored, for sure. And it's less likely to get burned out. But if you're thinking of your little old self and how what you do affects your little old self, it's easy to get bored. And I think it's more likely to get burned out. So like you're saying, what is your purpose? How do you best serve that chicken? This is the old saying, chew all the chicken off the bone, is when you're looking at something in a subject that really means something, you're chewing all the chicken off the bone. And I can tell you, working a pipette, the mechanics are extremely, extremely difficult to figure out. So that's not boring.
Yeah, I definitely have a lot of friends and colleagues who used to work in a laboratory who are going to really appreciate that, because it's something that they're made to work nearly half the day, every day, if not all day. And it's something that's often overlooked. And I think that's another thing, that it always comes back to these things that are always overlooked until you get an injury. No one is going to tell you to take a minute to step back and take care of your joints, take care of your wrists, take care of your ankles, or any other thing. Or even when it comes to burnout, take care of your mental health. If there's an imbalance, no one's going to see anything until they can see something physically. For me, when I sprained my ankle, it wasn't until I had crutches that people were like, okay, take a step back, sit down, relax. As soon as I stopped bringing the crutches around everywhere, they were like, oh, go up 10 flights of stairs and go grab something from the sixth floor. And I'm like, no, I can't do that. I'm still recovering. I need about 6 to 8 weeks. And they're like, oh, but you don't have the crutches anymore. You should be fine. It's not, as long when there's nothing physical for someone to see. Maybe if you had a wrist injury, and once you take the cast off or take the support off, people are going to say, oh, carry that 25-kilo bag up the stairs. And they're not going to, it's not going to register with them that you still need time to recover. You still have limits and boundaries in your recovery process, unless you make it very clear to them that your priority is recovering first, so that you can do this for longer and have a better quality of life in the future coming, rather than try to shrug off the recovery process and try to rush it and find yourself in a situation where it's 10 times worse and exacerbated.
Eugene, I've got something. I really think, it's interesting. I like what you say there. I think, so I'm really, I don't know if the word's critical. I don't know what to say. Things have to change. I think the leadership that the health and fitness people have brought to the table. For example, if you're a sprained ankle, well, somebody should tell you to have your body more in its vertical center if you keep on spraining the same ankle. And those are the types of things that we've always dealt with. This kind of, I used to call it like a one enemy, one bullet thing. And you say like, well, I've got a this, therefore it's a that. And I think it's interesting that we talked about Tiger Woods earlier. Tiger Woods was really good about saying, I'm bringing on a team. And actually most professional golfers nowadays will have a sports psychologist, a trainer, a manager, a PR person, or this or that. And somebody might say, well, they're multimillionaires. Of course, they've got all that. But nowadays, I think you're seeing the world go more into doing the things that I'm doing. I'm available. There's, we're doing a lot of these podcasts. We're trying to get the word out that, hey, we could be your hand. The advice we give you is going to give you good advice. People are going to be changed by watching your podcast about how the hands work and what they are, and quite simply how to take care of them. And I think we've got to have more leaders showing people, like if for your pipette friends, okay, I can listen to Terry and he can remind me about how I should take care of my hands. That's great. They don't have to, go out and hire an entourage. with podcasting, with information nowadays, a lot of this stuff is now becoming available thanks to like people like yourself. And now people really can just go, I want to learn more about all these different things. And I think I think our world is evolving better that way, that there's way more information about things you might never have known before. You don't have to be Tiger Woods and I'm going to hire Terry and bring him around with me to travel. I'm not traveling with anybody. I'd travel with Tiger maybe, but jokingly, it's available now. And I think we need to have people exploring these areas, like the hands and the grip is complicated. We've helped a lot of people figure this out. Well, somebody can help you with the ankles. Somebody can help you with the spine. You can look to find mentors now that are giving great information where they don't have to travel with you. You don't have to hire them as a consultant. And that's important.
Yeah. I say we've probably already covered it, but in all your experience between golf and working as a sports chiropractor, what would you say is the greatest lesson that you've learned in all your experience?
I think the greatest lesson would be, we actually have covered it a little bit. I think the greatest lesson is to be, to really be aware of what your purpose is, and to I think a lot of us think, well, it's little old me, I'm not that important. No, you are important. You're here, you're here in this world participating because you are important. So whatever service you're drawn to, whatever is to really develop yourself well in that service, and look at the different aspects of how you best perform within what you do, so that you can help people and be as valuable as you can. And I think when you do that, again, we talk about the boredom and burnout. I think you're going to have way less of that if you're looking to do what you can do for others. I know through doing the hand exercise stuff, it was like I was pursuing my own interests. I wanted to study the body. I wanted to pursue my golf career, but I was dropped in my lap this thing about grip. And now I absolutely I love every day talking to people like yourselves or helping people understand this area and giving them a solution to take care of it for the rest of their life. It's a very satisfying feeling. And so that's what I would say, is that remember that you're important. What you do is important because you're going to be an example to others and you're going to serve others. And if you're just doing who cares about little old me? Well, there's a lot of people that you might have been able to serve if you really got acute about how important you are and what you do is.
I love that. Especially, that was something that held me back first with the podcast as well, because after my 10th episode, I felt like I was really squeezing what I was trying to do here, because imposter syndrome and everything were all setting in, and I felt like, oh, I'm going to finish after 10 episodes. Maybe this isn't for me. Maybe this is all I have to say. And I had to take a step back and be like, well, I have accrued a lot of knowledge over the past couple of years. Not everyone has the same life experience as me. I can only speak from my own life experience. And what if one person listening today, it changed their awareness or changed how they think about a certain subject? Or maybe they might not agree with me, but it gives them a moment to see what their belief is on that subject and become better, more aware of themselves. And if I could do that for at least one person, then that's service enough. So that's my responsibility. Even if someone doesn't agree with what I have to say, it gets them thinking for themselves. And here I am nearly 90 episodes later, being like, okay, so there obviously was more purpose, or there was more to give there than I was holding myself back a lot. So definitely a lot that you have to say there, especially definitely great words of wisdom there from your experience.
Yeah, the imposter syndrome is part of everything. It's like you have to be, well, if I'm Michael Jordan, why do I want to play basketball? Why do I want to, if I'm not Michael Jordan, why do I want to play basketball? I'm not, you know what? You just, like you said, and I'm glad you didn't quit, because look at that. And every problem is solved by communication. Like every problem is solved by communication. so to do what you do, and these interviews you do, it gets people talking, gets people thinking. And even if people think, well, that Terry guy, whatever he's saying about the hands, that doesn't make sense. Well, go look at it. The further we get along in our conversations, the better. But we have to, we have to see ourselves as really special, each individual as being very valuable. And that imposter syndrome, this idea of being popular and being the one, you got to give that up and just move on your own path and keep on learning. And once you continue to do that, you will be one of the leaders. And we're leading people through hand exercise. I love it. And we're breaking a lot of myths. I love it. But at the same time, that's what we all need to be doing. And I'm very clear about that.
And that's another thing that I love, is that you're leading people through something as almost as nuanced as your hand exercises, something that a lot of people will overlook, and they'll be wondering, what's that 1% edge that this person has over me that I'm not doing? It's not that they're working out in the gym, lifting heavy weights 7 days a week and pushing themselves to the limit. It's the nuances. It's the things. For me, the nuances are having a glass of water first thing in the morning and rehydrating so that I think clearly. Looking in the bathroom mirror and just smiling. Just start off your day with a smile, and everything else is positive from there. You've at least had one person smile at you today, first thing in the morning, and it's yourself. So you've smiled at someone smiled back at you, and that's a good start to the day. And then again, just these simple hand exercises and the figure of 8, and you're already priming yourself for a day of whether you're pipetting or whether you're working on a keyboard, or maybe it's musical instrument, whatever, or it's something more technical, and you're priming yourself, you're taking care of yourself and becoming more aware of yourself as you start your day. So these are the nuances that I love, that you're optimizing your body so that you can take on whatever life throws at you.
That's it's a perfect wrap up. And I think that, when we're aware that we influence other people, that's a really important. So therefore, we know we're going to influence other people, work hard at what we do. The other thing I'd say, the last thing I'll say about hand exercises, you can look at somebody's forearms and go like, wow, that guy or that girl has really strong forearms. And I can tell you, it generally doesn't mean anything, because if I'm grabbing something statically and they develop these forearms, but they never develop the muscles through the full range of motion, those forearms could be just as static and just as ready to go, but they just look good. And that's another thing I think maybe to learn out of what you said. I don't know why I picked that up, is like, people want to, they just want to, well, everything looks under control, so therefore that's the main thing. And instead of looking at the nuances, right? The chest, everything looks good, so that must be good. Well, it could look good if you've got all the nuances and you've really advanced in your life and you've really pursued what you do to a high level. It'll look good too, but just the looks aren't everything. It's the energy that you've put into it, and the energy you exude to yourself and to others is absolutely vital.
So if anyone wants to find out more about what you do, what's the best place for them to find you, Terry?
Yeah, so they can go to doczac.com. It's doczac.com. And if anybody wants to ask questions, I welcome them. And the mechanical questions all come back to me. So that's info@doczac.com. And I do welcome the questions. That's my job, is to kind of educate people and answer questions if they're confused at anything.
I think that's another thing that I also love, is that I always ask people to reach out at the end of every episode, or anytime on social. I'm like, reach out to me, send me a message or anything. And it's how many people actually reply. I could hand out my phone number tomorrow and say, like, call me up, and I bet only maybe 5 people might do it max. So and as simple as you might make it, I'm just like, look, just drop me a DM or send me an email or leave me a voice message. And it's often only about maybe 5 or 10 people straight away that take you straight up on the offer. But those people always leave being like, oh, to be honest, I thought you were just going to throw a freebie at me. And it's like, no, we actually end up having a genuine conversation, which is nice. People also almost forget that they're talking to another human here in the podcast.
Yeah. I think, and that's the value. That's the value, is to connect to people and ask the questions. And that's one thing about, like, again, I just love the podcast. When a podcast is done well, you ask the questions naturally. Like, I don't like scripted stuff very much. You ask what you're curious about. And then and that's the thing about what we do, is the hands. There's so many applications. So many people can have questions. I do know what you mean, but I'll get few follow-ups. But somebody might ask a question that's just out of the blue about their hands, or about a rehab, like a recovery exercises or something. And because the hands are so diverse, that's often what happens. But what I do find is a lot of the value that comes out of that is it can really stimulate somebody to change in what they do, just by communicating and saying, boy, that person I listened to actually does respond. That's a real human being. And that's that's the value of that. We're all human beings, and like, we all want to help. If we're doing things for the right purpose, we want to help others well.
Yeah, that's the real beauty of it.
Yeah, it is. I think that's the highest level you get to, regardless of what else comes along.
Terry, thank you so much again for joining the show, and I really look forward to having you on again.
Well, Eugene, 2024, I'll track you down, and I love your show, and keep it up. And again, like I talk about over and over and over, keep helping people, and that's what I'm going to keep doing too. I promise.